Welcome to Discover Indie Film. I'm your host, Jeff Howard. I've got three gentlemen here with me on Zoom. So please don't complain about the sound quality. We're using Zoom because we're in various parts of the country. I will let the three of you introduce yourselves, I think, but they are here because their film, A Perfect Vintage, which is a fantastic feature-length documentary, was an official selection at Film Invasion Los Angeles last year in 2021. It took home the Audience Award for Best Documentary. And kind of exciting, it's having its release on March 22nd, and this podcast is going to release on March 22nd. So in theory, I should be all smart and say it's releasing today, but you know, this is a podcast, so people will listen to it when they listen to it. So the film comes out on March 22nd, and I'm going to let Troy Christian, the writer-director, introduce his collaborators.
Awesome. Yes, this is Troy speaking. So I was the director, editor, part-time colorist, gaffer, PA, all those things. When you're making a passion project, no-budget film, you end up wearing a lot of hats. And so actually I was the director, but I had the great pleasure of working with my brother, Timothy Milos, who is a winemaker, and Tom Graves, who came on board and is another filmmaker, a drone pilot. And between the three of us, we produced that film, and it was a hell of a good time.
Yeah, and it's an excellent film. Timothy, you want to... and I'll have each of you, and then we actually lost Tom. But we'll keep moving. He's coming back. The joys of Zoom. But I'll have each of you talk about your personal history, like what got you. Obviously, Troy is a filmmaker. Tim's a winemaker. But you want to just give a brief little personal. Oh, well, actually, first, Troy, you want to say where the film can be watched?
Yeah, for all things, A Perfect Vintage, you can go to aperfectvintage.com. I know we're going to do that at the end, but we'll get that at the top as well. It's going to be released on all major cable outlets, as well as DirecTV and Shaw Cable out of Canada, and Amazon and iTunes and Apple TV and all those usual suspects. So,
and as someone who's seen the film all the way through more than once, I think, and with you guys too, I can assure everyone that you should get a bottle or two of wine and some friends together in a safe environment and throw on this documentary, because it's not just interesting, it's inspiring, and it also kind of inspires you to sip. So, you know, people should come up with a drinking game for this documentary. It should be like every time someone on the screen, you know, I don't even know what the trigger should be, but I definitely think that wine should be imbibed with this film.
She's a thirsty movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're going to grab something, grab a California cab. That's a real treat to watch with it, because that's what you get the background in. So it's beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's actually the perfect pairing if you can get, and particularly a 2013 vintage. And I've been talking a lot. Tim, why don't you chime in and say something, since you?
Well, no, I was going to say. I mean, I would say drink cab, but drink whatever you love. And as a winemaker, while what I do a great deal of is Napa Valley Cabernet and Cabernet from other places, my goal as a winemaker is to invite people to enjoy the things that they enjoy and to try other wines. So absolutely, cab's a great choice. But if you only like white wine, drink white wine. If you only like rosé, drink that. And any glass of wine will go well with the movie. But we are talking about the 2013 vintage and the North Coast in the movie. And so it is that relationship between Cabernet and kind of the winemakers who are making it. On the other hand, you see Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, all these other varieties in the movie too. So we do get that exposure. I'll start. I got into wine in the late 90s and was a winemaker in Napa Valley by 2000. So I've been making wine in Napa Valley, in Sonoma Valley, Oregon, Washington, a little bit in Australia for the last 20 odd years. I don't own my own winery. I don't own my own vineyards. I make wine for other people. But in the end, those are my wines and an expression of art for the people I make the wine. And, you know, wine has this intersectional space where it is both fine art. It's also just a commodity in food. And I want people to understand there's lots of different ways of that relationship to the thing. I came into wine out of a background in molecular biology, biochemistry, plant pathology. So I left a PhD program on the East Coast, started working there, and then came out to Davis and Napa, and that is the start. So, and then to film through begrudging acquiescence. I think my brother wrote me in, and I didn't say no loud enough. And 7 years of a huge amount of fun and great time spent together, drinking wine, seeing vineyards, being introduced to Tom, and a lot of adventures in Napa and Sonoma together. So a huge pleasure in doing this film together.
As long as we've got you here, we always dive into what led people into becoming filmmakers in the process. I'm just curious. So your interest in wine, you moved out, and the fact that you don't own vineyards and stuff, do people come to you with, like, are you involved with them when they're planting too?
Absolutely. So, in fact, right now, one of my big projects is replanting a vineyard that I've worked with for 20 years. But so I help at all levels of both designing programs, sourcing fruit for some growers. I have clients who I helped identify vineyards for purchase, identify vineyards for to work with, to buy fruit from, to develop the concept of a program. And I make wine across kind of the whole range of price points. I think the least expensive wine that I'm involved with right now is around $9 a bottle, and the most expensive one is a little over $300. And so it's everything in the middle. That's pretty much covers the universe of wine. And I've probably crushed 45 or 50 different varieties over the last couple of years. And while it's mostly Cabernet, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, I've also done Nero d'Avola, Gewürztraminer, Sauvignon Blanc, Gruner Veltliner, on and on and on and on. Nero d'Avola, things that just people sound like I'm just making up names. So I'm interested in the process, the development, the ideas that go around wine, taste cultures that establish kind of what wine styles are and what's acceptable in the range of wine consumption. Americans drink very different wine than the French. There's a huge amount of overlap, but the things that we find enjoyable and delicious, there are other at the outside edge of those ranges. There's quite a bit of differences too. So. Wine is an endlessly interesting thing, and it's an interesting field between its making, its tasting, its history, and all the rest. So that's been the last 25 years, and I'm just beginning, I should say.
I would say one of the things that I learned in doing this film, me directing and producing the film and many other projects, that Tim and I we do the same thing. I get hired by people, and will connect with the filmmakers. I get hired by people to take their script or their commercial concept or their music video or their song and come up with some stuff. And I create everything, whatever needs to happen. I produce that event, that award show, that theater production. And it's not my theater and it's not my production, but I put it all together and I oversee all the moving parts. And Tim basically he's like the creative director of the wine business. It's the same thing. It's totally congruent.
Yeah, and it's interesting in the same way that Troy I know that some of the times he'll just be doing editing of somebody else's work to help finish the vision. I will come in and work as a blending consultant with other winemakers and just taste the wines that they've made and help them achieve the goal that they're after. And so that's one aspect. So many of these things Troy and I together find that this creative process, almost regardless of the thing that you're working on, has its echoes, has its repetition. That we see the same process. He's a director. He's managing someone's event. I'm doing the same thing for a harvest. Or you're just coming in and doing finishing touches on something. Well, I do that too. Or you do the creation from the ground up, and someone says, "I have this idea." I say, "Great, I'll take it and I'll run." That thing, or you come up with your own. So the thing that Troy has done that I haven't is I literally don't make my own wine. I make wine for other people. So in this instance, Troy had the opportunity to begin his own project from the ground up and create his own vision.
Yeah, actually, my next question was going to be to Troy, and it was going to be, all right, so when your brother becomes a winemaker, how long did it take the filmmaker and you to want to make a film about that?
Well, one of the greatest things about the entire process was getting to hang out with Timothy and get to know each other. And it hadn't really dawned on me, but it was about 2012 when I thought, I really need to do a passion project. I've been working on other people's documentaries, other people's projects. I really want to do something. I've got the camera and the skills, and I can kind of do the thing from soup to nuts. So let me do it. And I happen to be just hanging out with Timothy and going up to visit and do the family thing and ride along with him a little bit to where he was doing some blending or some tasting, and just started observing. And I'm kind of a question asker, right? So, and Tim's kind of a question answerer. So we would just get into these conversations about, well, how does this, and why does that, and how does this work? And so I just started saying, wow, this is a really interesting topic, and I'm into wine, so it's always nice to do a passion project based on something that you're passionate about. And also Tim being so eloquent in the way he speaks and knowledgeable, and his grasp of history and so much stuff. We just started having these conversations, and it just spawned the concept of, let's do something about this. And it actually started a lot smaller. So literally 2012, now we're into 2013, and it's all right, let me follow you for a year and see what that's like. And I'll come up on occasion for every new big event that's happening during the year and try to capture that piece of the process as we go on. The project grew. Tom came on board and brought his drone, so we had to go reshoot some areas because now we could see it from a bird's eye view. And it started as this little idea in 2012. In 2013, we were off and running, and it only took us 8 years to finish it.
Which is actually not bad at all for a feature-length documentary, I think. I mean, plus the fact that you were getting footage, plus the fact that you were capturing a wine season over time. I mean, yeah, it's perfectly normal, actually, I think, to take 8 years. Yeah,
well, and not only that, it's not only the fruit is an annual occurrence, right? From bud break to flowering to set to veraison to harvest. But then there's bottling. There's also barreling. And then there's time that the wine has to age and do its thing. And so it's basically 3 years after that year when it gets released to the public, and then you enter into the whole thing of people tasting it for the first time and people judging it and scoring it, which we also cover in the film as well. So you kind of get to see, in watching the film, you'll get to see from the original pruning of that year all the way to the pouring of it and the points. And there's a lot of P's there. Prune, pour, points, perfection. I don't know. There you go. So, Tom, we haven't heard from you. What do you got on all that, Mr. Listener?
Well, I mean, I love that you guys are speaking of your passions, and that's, what kind of brought me into this whole project to begin with. As like a child, I always played with cameras and did stop animation and everything. But going into school, I was just excelling at math and science, and so engineering was the route, and it just felt so right. And so I did the optical background. And just, recently kind of within the last decade gave up that path to do full-time filmmaking, and met one of our mutual friends on an airplane who introduced me to Troy. We started working together, and then a friend loans me a drone and says, "Hey, I know that you're into filmmaking, try this out." And so now bringing that to the party, got to meet the whole crew, and the whole crew being Troy and Tim. So this is what we get. Yeah.
Well, it's a great time. Isn't it a great time for this kind of filmmaking? Because now that drones are accessible, I mean, the shots in a perfect vintage, especially like the opening, landscapes, are so beautiful and so professional looking, and that would have been a helicopter 5-10 years ago. That would have been unattainable footage. And instead you've got this amazing looking film. Honestly, I mean, indie film, I personally try to avoid talking about dollars, but it makes that film look so much. The production values are wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I loved about the aerial footage. It's we had a GoPro at first, but then we ended up moving on to the Mavic Pro, and it's, it's such a huge difference to go to 4K. But then, I look at my work of the space telescope, and we're still working in 1K, trying to get footage out, but it's a whole different set of optics. So it makes a big difference.
Yeah. You didn't mention NASA yet.
Yeah, sorry, Tom doesn't shoot his own horn. He is working on the James Webb Telescope. I'm
an engineer supporting James Webb. Right now I'm monitoring the state of health and writing procedures for any troubleshooting while now it's on orbit. It launched December 25th, so the Christmas Day launch down in French Guiana, which I was there for. I've been supporting this for 7 years alongside the film project. So for me, it's really interesting thing that I get to use both sides of my brain, the right side, the left side, and to bring that together has really been something special for me. So I want you all to see this piece and enjoy it, and I think you will. I think it's, like you said, a high production value, and it's fun to watch. It's a fun documentary.
Yeah, and Tom actually booked that gig while we were working on this film, so that was exciting to be we got to go along for the ride and understand a little bit about all that brilliant technology that came out of Northrop Grumman and NASA. But speaking of technology, it takes us to another topic. We started the film in 2013. At that point, I think I owned a Canon 7D. And Tom had a 5D, and we had a 60D, and then so we're in 2K and a GoPro drone, and then it wasn't long thereafter that the 4K cameras came in. So there was an entire technological shift from when we started the film to when we actually wrapped principal photography. So we actually did go back and reshoot a couple of things just because they would look nicer in 4K and better cameras and all that kind of stuff. Like Tom said, from the GoPro shots to the Mavic Pro shots. So we retraced a few steps to add that production value. But chasing technology is always a thing in this industry. But particularly, we were right at that point where it went from 2K to 4K cameras readily available. So yeah, and 4K is certainly common now, especially in streaming. I'm sure your film is going to look gorgeous in the streaming in 4K. I was going to add that all three of you have careers and temperaments. When Troy described the calendar of winemaking, I couldn't help but think you also are describing the calendar of filmmaking because you put in so much work and then you finish. And then it normally is a year or two before it gets seen. And to listen to Tom talk about launching a telescope into space to look back at the sources of the universe. And I'm like, well, talk about effort. And then you wait how long for it to be in position? Like these are all projects where a huge amount of work goes in. And then there's a long period of waiting for the results. And second guessing yourself the whole time and wondering what it's going to be and troubleshooting. But that telescope, it's only 1K, that little wimpy ass telescope up there. So
Right. There's just a lot of those 1K sensors on there.
Yeah. So,
and that timeline, I mean, the inception of decades for this
Speaking of technology. Are you there, Tom?
We lost it for a second, Tom. But what he was going to say it was decades of that telescope in its development, design, build, and all the rest. And Tom's walked me through that, and we had a chance to see it down in the clean. Well, it was still in the clean room through sites
in Torrance,
in Torrance to see that before it got loaded up on a ship and sent down to South America. It's a pretty tremendous piece of equipment, venture, and then absolutely cannot wait for data to come out. I know that'll be some time on that too.
Yeah, that's looking forward to that. I didn't really get into how I got into filmmaking. I started as a musician first and then had a dance career, which I just got a call from my agent last night that I think I'm going to be dancing on a TV show in a couple of weeks. It hurts more now, way more now. I know this is audio only, but I'm 60. And so from the dance and choreography into creative direction into editing, and all those things kind of play together as far as filmmaking. It's kind of all of those languages meeting in the middle, choreographing imagery and using timing and musicality and creative direction and choreography.
Right, so you followed that path of going from performer to behind the camera.
Correct. And I mean, I always said I'm going to get paid to go to film school. I'm not going to pay to go to film school. And I would just, instead of fucking around on set with everybody, I would go stand behind Video Village and listen to those people who were doing that thing. And I've worked with some Gore Verbinski and Christopher Columbus being a performer on their movies that they've done. And listening to how they problem solve and what they're talking about, and talk to the camera guy and what is this and what does that do. And so just being, I said it earlier, I was a question asker. So there, it helped me, and it was kind of the best film school. A quick little aside to that is that I got hired to direct these 2 commercials for the Los Angeles Film School. And they said, please use some of our graduates as your crew so they can get some experience on set. And I brought in my group of dancers. None of us ever went to film school, but we were making all kinds of content for a long time. And we got there and we're like, hey, can you take that? And the guy's like, oh, the everlasting gobstopper. Yeah, can you put it in the corner right there? And they're fumbling with it or bumbling. And I'm going, hey, lower that thing. Oh, it doesn't go down that far. I'm going, oh, it goes like this. And so we didn't have the school behind us, but we had the practical application and those graduates, and they were graduates of this film school. And that's my point. Just pay attention when you're on set, and the film school is right there before you.
Absolutely. All right, so we can jump back into a perfect vintage land. We were talking about, the process of making it. Was it rewarding the whole way along? Because I have this bias, or this prejudice that I think it was just a pleasure. I know filmmaking is always a pain in the ass, but the subject was so fun, and as a team, you're truly friends. Not just brothers, friends. Tom is truly a friend. So, talk about it strikes me as a wonderful opportunity to just enjoy your work.
Definitely. I'll say for sure it was great. And we had some great times. We had some great hungover mornings that we had to get up early. Still filmmaking is tedious and hard, and there's long days. And one of the things about documentary filmmaking is trying to capture that moment and being there at the right time. So there's some serendipitous times that we'll have, but I'll let someone else chime in before I go into any of those stories. But it was definitely a pleasure to be with my brother and my brothers through this process. We had a fucking ball. Anyone else want to chime in on that?
I'll just say I miss having these guys come up and bug me all the time. So, there's a lot less wine being drunk in my house now, though the cellar keeps loading up. So you need to come up and help me empty that thing out again.
Well, twist my arm. Actually, Tom and I had a conversation. We're coming up probably within the next 2 weeks. We're going to find a time. So
I've heard 2 weeks before.
Yes. Yeah. Hey, Jeff, the film has been, this is a great little side note. I've been saying, people keep saying, how long till the film's going to be done? I'm like, about 2 weeks. And it's been 2 weeks for about 5 years. Until 2 days ago, when it was 2 weeks before the 22nd, when it actually was 2 weeks. I did a post on it going, it's actually 2 weeks now, and it's out of our hands. So there's that.
It's out of our hands, so you can believe us. Yeah.
Well, and actually, of course, I didn't mention that when it was an official selection at Film Invasion Los Angeles last June, we weren't quite. We actually had a COVID surge that kept us virtual, but I believe you had that fantastic screening up in Napa.
Yeah, we were. We also got into the Sonoma International Film Festival, so we did a screening at what's the name of the theater there?
Sebastiani.
The Sebastiani Theater. That was thrilling. That was really good for us. We also had a screening down here. We were in Pasadena and Film Festival as well, and we were at the Laemmle in Pasadena, and that was probably, even though the crowd was a lot smaller, which is COVID, oh my goodness, what a year to bring a film out. But that viewing experience with the DCP and seeing it on the screen with the 5.1 sound, that was probably the best looking experience we had as far as watching it in a theater. We also did Newport, went down there and had the DCP going, so I kind of assumed that it would be in perfect viewing shape just like it was in Pasadena, and they had punched in on it. So like lower thirds are almost hanging off the bottom. And I'm so meticulous in my editing about, and I know Tom is too, about what the framing feels like and what it looks like. And to have the whole thing punched in a little bit, I was like, oh, the experience was wrecked for me. So all you filmmakers out there, if they ever say, we do our technical session on our own, don't worry about it, we got this. Don't believe them. Go get your eyes on it. Have a listen, because they don't know what they're looking at. And had I seen it in 2 seconds, I would have said, hey, man, that's you're punched in on it. You got to zoom out a little so we can see the whole image.
You're discussing a topic. I don't want to do a huge tangent, but I mean, as a film festival, we deal with that big time. And when we talk to theaters about shifting locations and stuff, also DCP, it's all about maintenance. And there's a lot of technical factors. Where we screen, we're able to have longer Q&As and stuff because we screen at a theater that's a playhouse that has a 1080p projection. And then we don't have to make little films convert to DCP. But I always sit there in that audience, man. I'm talking about, sorry to take this up in your podcast, but I sit there and I'm like, those should be dark blacks. Instead, they're grays. And like, it drives me nuts. But then I go to a local AMC and it's the same story. Like even DCP, you don't have a great image, which must be so frustrating. It's frustrating for me as a film goer, film watcher. As a filmmaker, I'm sure it's like Timothy seeing people, put ice in their wine or something.
Or drinking wine that's corked. That's the worst thing. It's like, no, that's just flawed. That's not you. That's just not flawed. Yeah. Please, again, if you like ice in your wine, I'm going to tell you, I see too. Well, this whole other tangent, which is, I watch people be too worried about how they address wine, and I want people to be comfortable with it in the way that you would be about anything else. And if you like that thing, you do that thing. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Yeah, so you hear that, going back to swinging it back to A Perfect Vintage. Those are the kind of conversations that, and Tim's not the only winemaker in the film. There's some really beautiful people in the film. And what the film itself is, it's a nice piece of work. It's a labor of love. We had a very small crew. We funded it ourselves, all that stuff. But at the heart of A Perfect Vintage, aside from the great timing that one of the wines that we covered Tim making actually scored his first 100-point wine from Robert Parker Jr., the top wine critic, so hence the title. There are some beautiful people with a great passion. Again, for filmmakers, film buffs, you're going to see the same exact passion and drive that drives us to do what we do in these winemakers trying to make this perfect bottle of wine or this beautiful expression of the land that it comes from and the people. So it's a beautiful story for that. If you're into good heart and really intelligent people speaking about their craft, it's a good watch.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the fact that you got a feeling that all these winemakers support each other and root for each other. Everyone's rooting for everyone to do well. I'm sure there are some assholes in the industry who want your wine to suck, but at least within this documentary, it's all positivity around it too.
Yeah, so it's really the impression you get is that a rising tide raises all ships. So
I'll give the 15-second bit of history. There was a time when Napa was developing its own identity, and Robert Mondavi, Mr. Mondavi, was a spokesperson not for Mondavi, but always for Napa Valley. And there's a history of farmers everywhere in the world, Napa being one of those places, where when things start to go sideways, my tractor's down, I don't have enough boxes to pick, we're out of tank space, you try to help your neighbor because next year that might be you. And Mr. Mondavi always talked about the greatness of place, talking about the place, Napa Valley, and raising that place together. And if we have that idea of this is a great place to make wine and all of us are doing good work, then it helps each and every brand, not I'm so much better than the next guy. wine is also profoundly personal, so that you may love or hate my wine. It makes it not good or bad. In the same way that film is. We'll get to our list of, talk about what your favorite film is. Your best friend may have a slightly different view of things, or the film that you love for one reason because of nostalgia, the next person in line can't stand because they don't like that actor. And I've talked about the assholes in the wine business. There's lots of people I know, or not lots. There are a few people like, they make great wine and I won't drink it. You don't want to have anything to do with that guy. There aren't that many of those people. Most of us are trying to do the right thing for the people we work for us, and then for each other in the community, because it is a community. It's a nice thing to be. And the truth of course, is essentially everyone in the film are my friends. So that's, as I would say, I'm the unlisted casting director, because these are people I could pick up and say, hey, would you mind spending an afternoon with my brother in front of the camera? And I think part of the interview process, part of that intimacy and the authenticity of the responses is because they trust me, they trusted him. And Troy, of course, as he says, he's a great question asker, but he's actually a brilliant interviewer in that he very much lets people answer, let's ask questions that are I don't want to say safe, because they're not always, but he creates a sphere of safety for people to answer the questions he asks in a space where they're not worried about being, pilloried for their answer. They can really express themselves in its truest form. And that's really kudos to him for having that capacity to ask those questions. And having been on the receiving end of those questions myself, he wants you to say what you want to say, and he'll make you look good saying it. He's not concerned about a gotcha question or trying to catch you at something. It's, tell me about what it is you do. And it's a beautiful thing to me for people to say, oh, right, this is what I do. This is why I do it.
Yeah. I'm just going to jump on that, Tim, because that's something that I really enjoy working with Troy on as well. It's just his ability to really make the interview feel comfortable and approachable and educational at the same time. You're learning something, you're getting something out of it, and it's an experience that I've seen the backstage of, which is very much about the editing and putting that story together. And like Troy mentioned earlier, this was film school for him and I, big time. Like, we learned because of how long duration of the shoot. We had different cameras, different equipment, the coloring and the different things, the technical issues we had to overcome just to make this look like what we wanted it to look like. And it was a great experience. So kudos to Troy and his ability. And I've seen it not only in this film, but in many other things that we work on together. And you can keep following him for the good stuff.
Thank you, guys. Keep going.
Well, I was going to say, Troy, you didn't get a chance. I believe you said it in our Q&A for the festival, but I mean, so people understand, how many hours of footage off the top of your head went into the film?
6 terabytes.
6 terabytes, which is hundreds of hours, yeah?
Yeah. Hundreds of hours, yeah. Because the interviews that I would do would be anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour. And then with Timothy, I did several different interviews. So that just the interviews alone are 100 hours plus. But it was a very interesting process in that it took so long going back to the edit and remembering where you were, because in the meantime, Tom's working on a telescope and Tim's making wine and I'm off shooting a TV show or dancing on a TV show or choreographing something. So going back to it, it was a totally... I've worked on many films before in many capacities, editing, directing, performing. This was all in and stretched out over time. And to Tom's point, we did learn a hell of a lot about, there's a whole other lesson, filmmakers, that you'll get when you finally get one done. And then now what do you do with it? The whole distribution thing, and then passing QC and that whole thing, and copyright and so on and so forth, errors and omissions insurance. And there's a list of things that you've got to learn about that have nothing to do with what you really like to do, which is kind of making a film. So lots of footage, and the film took many different turns as new stuff would come to light, and just continuing to hone the edit. And actually, Jeff, since you saw it last, when we got it to the distributor, they said, hey, well, we need to make sure it doesn't feel too much like product placement, and the people who sell movies telling us what their thoughts were. So we actually dove back in. We cut about 10 minutes of the film out. We swapped out some shots so that it seemed more like a equal opportunity product placement as opposed to hammering on a particular brand. And so it's a little tighter than when you saw it last. And I feel really good about it. Getting through QC was a bitch, though. That was a thing. When you're dealing with all those disparate cameras and trying to pass that damn thing, when it turns out that my friend Casey came and shot, and he had a 5D, and he shot a few days with us, or a week, and his camera had a dead pixel. One dead pixel. Just one. And so we had to go through all these shots in the film and find a way to mask this dead pixel that I never saw. No one ever saw it except the QC computers. So things like that you'll run into that are really fun.
Yeah, and because you're going out on so many different systems, something people probably don't realize is DCP means digital cinema projection, and that actually every theater in the country kind of is on the same standard. But these streaming services you're on, these VOD services, everyone's got a different technical demand, right?
Yeah, these requirements, technical requirements for sure. So that
was actually one of the big decisions that we had to make. Like, do we go with a distributor that's going to handle all that stuff for us, or do we kind of like piece it together ourselves? Because I know a lot of people face that decision. So for us, we wanted it in other people's hands so that, we didn't have to go through that technical hoop every time a new video platform needed a different configuration for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mess right now for distribution.
Yeah. And I find the distributors are the lowly agents of the film business, or the used car salesman in a way. Bless your hearts, we couldn't do it without you. But we had a lot of offers for distribution, but some of them were just marketing people who were going to take our film and take their $25,000-$30,000 to get us distribution and put the poster together and this together and the trailer and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of people standing there with their hand out that want to get between you and your dollars. And even we're with Vision Films, and they have an infrastructure and they're good, and they put a little bit of money where their mouth was. So we feel like we landed in a good spot. But there were a lot of people who were really, really willing to skim most of the money right off the top, and we as filmmakers are so excited to get our damn film out there into the world that we sign some of those deals that may serve us or may not.
It is. It's always been a treacherous landscape, that's for sure. You went with a producer's rep too, right? So you had a little help.
No, we just.
You were on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky. Yeah, and you got to protect your work, because you hand it off to the wrong people and it starts showing up in all kinds of markets and all kinds of crazy things, and you're getting nothing for it.
Yeah, I had a friend who had a good friend of his had a movie that ended up with an aggregator who went bankrupt. So his film became part of the bankruptcy deal. So he no longer owned his film and couldn't screen it, play it, sell it, nothing. So you have to be really careful in that end of the business. It's like you said, it's a treacherous landscape for sure.
It is, but you got some good minds. I'm looking at 3 experienced, intelligent people, so I'm sure you've reached the point where you can spot a snake.
Yeah, hopefully.
My business does it for you too. Yeah, exactly. I figure wine, music, film, it's probably all the same, frankly. So as far as that goes, in terms of people wanting to extract value from the work and give you nothing really less than you should get back in return. But having a good distributor, as always, is essential to everything.
Yeah.
Whether that's music or books or film
or wine.
for wine.
Yeah. It is funny that you have those kinds of people around feature documentaries because, feature documentaries, that's where all the money's at.
We've made it now. We've made it now.
It's definitely why we do this. Yeah.
Well, the beautiful thing is you've got it out there, or you'll have it out there today. It's out. Yeah. And, has there been talk with Vision Films about, obviously Timothy has some connections, like getting the wine community, people who weren't terribly aware of it. Like, all my snobby rich friends who live over in Brentwood, I'm going to insist that they rent it because this film has an audience. It just has to find it.
Yeah. Well, and a couple of the distributors there was another distribution company that a friend of mine has done a bunch of films with called Indie Rights. And they said, well, would love to help you find an audience for your film. And that was the quote from them. And he's had a really good experience with them. These guys are pretty on that. And we, through social media and stuff, we're kind of ratcheting up the effort to, well, I find myself on the A Perfect Vintage Instagram, which if you're listening, you should go check it out on Insta, A Perfect Vintage. Just populating that with fun stuff and liking and following everybody who's in the wine business to create awareness. And that's the whole thing. It's joining wine groups on Facebook and just finding the social media is a pretty powerful tool to get people interested in seeing the piece. And there is a market, and we have heard some stories about films that I guess Vision Films has a documentary on the making of Hamilton, which really did nothing, and then Disney took on Hamilton, and suddenly this film is selling like hotcakes, and hopefully, word of mouth is a great sales thing as well as social media, so we're going to try everything we can to have it be watched and actually have it make a little more money than just what the distributors are going to skim right off the top. Because it'd be good to get reimbursed just a little bit.
Well, I wish you well on that for sure, because it deserves it. This is a perfect film for wine nights. I actually know of a filmmaker. Damn, I'm forgetting the name, but it was a documentary. And during COVID, she went ahead and I think she bought like a cargo van and set it up with so that she could lower a screen on the side of it. And she drove around the country holding screenings in people's backyards, people who were interested in the thing, and totally spread word of mouth. And now shame on me. There's been too many films coming in and out of my mind. Mm-hmm. But it was a really cool little grassroots way. Clearly every wine bar in Los Angeles should have a Perfect Vintage little poster in the window. I mean, come on.
Yeah, true story. And they are actually, I'm not quite sure why, but printing DVDs. So there's going to be a hard copy of this thing. So we're working on getting them in gift shops in Napa and we've always had, again, the beautiful people, Tim being the casting director and his friends being in this film. They've always been very supportive. Angelina Mondavi, Elizabeth Viana, Ron Haber, who else?
I got the list in front of me. Ian Todd Blackburn.
Yeah, Ian Todd Blackburn's in the film. So we've got a couple great Psalms that are in there. And he's got a great wine presence for educational purposes, and he sells wine here in Los Angeles. I think it's what's it called? The Wine Merchant, maybe and he's got Ian Blackburn stuff. Anyway, Ian Todd Blackburn is his name, and if you want to learn about wine, he's a great resource. So we have really good support from everybody who's in the film.
That should help. That's great.
Yeah, for sure.
That's great. And so, obviously, you probably, I know you did a little adjustment after working with the distributor, but you probably had picture locked for a year or two?
No.
Well, you were on the festival circuit almost a year ago.
Yeah, we kind of locked picture for the festival circuit, but then afterwards, because of the whole technology thing, Tom and I went in on a new drone, the Unique drone, which has a nicer lens on it and is even better than the Mavic. So we went back and reshot a couple things with that just because we happened to be up in Napa for this amazing music festival called Bottle Rock, which I highly recommend for anybody. Actually, I don't recommend it. It's too crowded. Don't go to Bottle Rock. So we did swap out a few shots, and because there's so much footage that every once in a while you go, oh, it would go great with that. So although story was locked, we did swap out a few images here and there because we just couldn't fucking help ourselves.
For sure. Well, I was actually trying to lead the question into the projects you've been working on since.
Trying to figure out what the next passion project is, but I still work a ton as an editor and a director on all kinds of other things, but it's more that my
music videos
music videos have
for the Grays,
right. She's a talent. This 13, she's now 14, little singer songwriter. So I've been doing some music videos for her, which are Alyssa Grace Music. So we do well with the music video thing, and what else? It all runs together for me.
Yeah, I actually started another project just following the people that are working on web. So trying to get the background story of like what it takes to actually build something this complicated, this big. That it's just another passion project. So we'll see how it turns out. But now I know a little bit about the process, so might be able to get it a little bit quicker, get it done a little quicker.
Yeah, and the other passion project that I've been working on a bit is that our family is pretty crazy, having grown up in San Francisco in the 60s. So my dad was a bass player for Jerry Garcia. Our mom was Lenny Bruce's secretary. So there's a lot of that Haight-Ashbury Summer of Love stuff that's in my DNA. So I've gone up and started shooting some things based around that whole thing. My dad and his twin brother were the banjo/dobro/bass players for Jerry Garcia just before the Dead. So there's some stuff there. We've got some never before seen footage that we're trying to see if there's a way we can rope that into something cool. Yeah. The 60s in the Bay Area, particularly San Francisco and all of that, has always been something that's really fascinated me, and I'm going to find a way to do some story about that in some form or fashion. And it may be that, it may not be that, but I've always felt like, wow, that was the beginning of so many things that continue today without getting into politics and civil rights and all of the other stuff that comes along with that.
For sure. But just music, film, and wine, they all go together. I know music documentaries are always welcome. Always.
For sure. Yeah, and Tim and I have been talking about another thing, and Tom as well. I've trademarked a new title for something, but I'm not going to let that out of the bag yet. But there's another wine project in the offing as well. So, because, like Tim said, his wine cellar is full. So we would be remiss not to get up there and get into another project. So we could it's the least we can do.
Let's make some space. So what you need to do is make some space.
It's the least we can do.
I bet. All right. Well, I feel like we're wrapping it up. Do you want to mention the website again?
Sure. aperfectvintage.com, and we're on Facebook, A Perfect Vintage, and on Instagram, A Perfect Vintage. And all of the updates to where you can see it, stream it, will be on the site. And it's updated. Tom handles that. Anything else, Tom? Did I leave anything out?
Well, you can find the extended trailer there too. So it's a nice spot to get your cut on the trailer as opposed to the marketing one that is, has a little less soul in it. So.
Yeah. Maybe I'll recommend use that trailer to decide what drinking game you'll play.
There you go.
That's a great idea.
And then, heck, you should start an online. People should send ideas to drinking game ideas to your Instagram.
Yeah. We actually we have some free streams to give out, so we're trying to we're in the process of trying to figure out some. Speaking of drinking games, some streaming games or contests and see what we can do with that. So
so follow us on Instagram, Facebook to get the latest on that. We got a few to give away.
Yep.
Right.
And
But not
a fantastic film about a fantastic wine. Timothy, if someone wants to sample your wares.
So I make wine for a number of properties in Napa and Sonoma. Come see us at Tank Garage in Calistoga, James Cole in Napa. Immortal Estate is poured at Region in Sebastopol, at the Barlow in Sebastopol, as is Voluco. The Habers are by appointment only, and they're highly allocated, very hard to find. I think that caught Liquid Sky and The Wager are available too online. So most of the things I deal with are very small properties. Oh, and come to RD at the south end of Napa. So you can make a lovely day in Napa. Started RD, one of the few Asian American owned wineries in California. Try the variety that it is, and make your way up Valley and to Tank with the madness and creativity that we do there.
Yeah, RD Winery. They do a great, it's like a 6 wine flight and a 6 food flight. A great pairing / tasting that you can do down there amongst the cherry blossom trees at their spot. And Tank Garage is just before you turn right on the main strip in Calistoga. They took an old 50s gas station and turned it into the tasting room. And Timothy and Bertus, another winemaker in the film, they get to really play, because I don't know if the listeners know much about this, but in wine, historically, there have been a lot of rules. You can only put so much of this, and if it doesn't come from that place, it can't be called that, and there's just so many things. But at Tank Garage, they kind of get to play, and they do small, 600 cases of this and 350 cases of that, but they get to kind of bend the rules and have some fun. Would you say that's true, Tim?
It is exactly what we do. It's almost deconstructed winemaking, where you say, okay, how is this supposed to go? Now, what if we don't do that? And the goal is not to be weird; it's to make something unexpectedly delightful. The only end product is deliciousness. So, how do we do things that no one's done before, or how do we do things that people have done before, but in a different way, or completely different application? So it is. It's my sandbox. Go play with my toys in the sand.
Hopefully, there's no lumps of shit.
Well, it depends. No, it depends. Actually, in the pet nats, it's cloudy as all get out. It's there's a style of wine very classic to France that the cool kids have brought back. So Pétillant Naturel, natural sparkling wine, not made by the Méthode Champenoise, but another more traditional way, and it comes with yeast in the bottom of the bottle, like a good bottle of beer. So be careful when opening, and then we do it with all kinds of different varieties that you might not expect. So we get to play with that too. So, and then if you truly love a great Cabernet, between Stewart Cellars in Yountville, James Cole in Napa, Haber on Howell Mountain, Howl at the Moon on Howell Mountain, Liquid Sky on Moon Mountain. Actually, didn't talk to Corbin Cameron on Moon Mountain, Voluco on the backside of Spring Mountain, Immortal Estate, any number of these places across the whole range of wine. So,
and for our listeners that weren't able to write all that down, it's on the website with links to their online distribution stuff.
Yeah, and Tim's full bio, and there's information on all of us in there. So
at aperfectvintage.com.
Yeah, in all seriousness, the Napa Board of Tourism owes you a debt, because the film surely makes one. I haven't been up there since a friend's wedding 15-ish years ago, because I don't know, life is just crazy, but Lord knows watching this film makes one long to go up to California wine country. Just an hour north of San Francisco? Less?
Absolutely.
Not a rough drive at all.
No. Depends on traffic, kind of like
Yeah, just like LA, could be 3, but usually it's about an hour, and great wine, great restaurants, hiking trails, spas, the whole deal.
Yeah, you can take a mud bath in Calistoga and then have wine tonight.
Yep.
Exactly.
And the culinary scene there it's really the culinary capital of California, wouldn't you say, Tim?
I mean, it's hard to say that it's not LA, but LA, San Francisco, and Napa as an extension. We have a number of 1, 2, and 3-star Michelin restaurants in our area. So yeah, if that sets the standard, it's excellent work going on here.
Mm-hmm.
It is an amazing place for Epicurean debauchery.
Absolutely. And, and then you can detox in the mud bath the next day. So you have both sides.
Yeah. Absolutely. You make me miss the days up there at. Anyway, yeah. I won't wax nostalgic about the whole Napa Valley area. Just everyone should know it's wonderful.
Yeah. Come on up.
And aperfectvintage.com is where you can get all kinds of great tips about that. And discoverindiefilm.com will also have links to everything for this podcast and for more. You can always go to discoverindiefilm.com, and on social media it's at DIFWins. And we did mention that A Perfect Vintage won awards at Film Invasion Los Angeles. That's a festival we hold every June. So learn more about that at filminvasionla.com, and it's at Film Invasion LA on social media. And the last thing to blurt out is Film Invasion LA does have a sister festival that we hold every November. That's the Sherman Oaks Film Festival, and you can learn about it at ShermanOaksFF.com, and it's at Sherman Oaks FF on social media. Very proud to have your film be a Film Invasion Los Angeles alumni.
Well, we had a great time at the festival. Obviously so hampered due to COVID, but you really ran a great festival, and people definitely check out what Jeff has going on at Film Invasion in Sherman Oaks.
Yeah, we had a nice time. I just recently talked to someone else who was there, and they were saying something along the lines of, we had an outdoor mixer of sorts at a local tequila place, and it was a welcome relief after a year of COVID to have an outdoor film festival mixer.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I think it was one of the first ones where we were able to actually get in the same room with some people and other fellow filmmakers and talk shop. It was really great.
Yeah. And I actually almost said it earlier when Tim was talking about his friends who are also winemakers and how supportive they are of each other. It's really nice to see that filmmakers are really, I think, indie filmmakers, unlike 20, 30 years ago when it was elbows out, me, I want to try it. Now I think everyone's really thoughtful and considerate of each other and supportive. It's a great community.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah, it was really nice to meet some of them at the Film Invasion mixer, and we actually connected with some and still in contact and looking at future projects together. So it's really cool.
Fantastic. I love hearing that. Mm. All right, gentlemen, it was a pleasure talking to you about this. For those listening, if you're still listening, even after I went through the spiel of website URLs and social media handles, we're going to do another podcast right after this one where you get to hear Troy, Tim, and Tom talk about their favorite films, and maybe some that they don't like so much. So that's always fun. So thank you, all three of you.
Thanks for having us, Jeff.
And thank you, everyone, for listening.